uh, okay, let's get started. Usually people always come in late. And I would love to get you started. So this is Wanley Carry-On. He is the director of Outer Sea Shadow over down by the Marble Hill Apartments in down on Broadway. And they do these amazing art projects that are part of the community gardens and community. And I'll let him go ahead and take over.
Thank you, Barbara. So today, before I start the presentation, I also wanted to have a feeling of like who's in the room, because there is like many layers of the work that we do in the gardens that I can speak about, I can talk about, and I would love for to direct my presentation more targeted to who is listening. So it'd be great if like everyone can just say who you are and what's the relationship with RSS, and like what is the interest about gardening or coming to the presentation, and that way I can start the presentation. So I see that we have Renee.
Yes, it's Renee. Yeah.
Renee, okay.
Well, I'm a member. My name is Renee Hankerson. I'm a member of RSS.
Uh-huh.
And I love flowers. I love gardening, but unfortunately I'm living in an apartment, so I can't do gardening.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have plants, and I really love them.
Amazing, amazing. And Jean?
Hello, I do a little gardening, flowers, tomato, cucumber. That's about it.
Oh, a little bit of cucumber, like that. Like I guess that you participate in a community garden, or do you have that at home?
No, just a small home. It's a little plot, little strip.
Amazing, that's amazing. And Leonora?
I don't really do any gardening, but I like to see the gardening that's done in the communities as you pass by the different communities in different neighborhoods.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so I want to share my screen, and I'm going to tell you an interesting story, I guess. I hope that is an interesting story. And I guess, yes, I can share. Oh, why is not letting me? I don't know why it's not letting me.
Are you able to log in? You should
No,
be.
I think there is something about, it's my configuration. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna have to leave the call.
That's fine. I'll let you back in.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, well, Linda, I know you just joined. We have a couple technical difficulties. He'll be right back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I like your screensaver.
Thank you. Take a look at my video.
Oh, well, come on. I'm a cat lover, so there you go.
My cat behind me, but I don't want to freak everyone out, so I'll turn my video off.
Oh, listen, it's a cat, and a lot of cat lovers out here. All right, I think Wanley's back. Let me okay. Okay, let me make sure.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, good. You're off.
Yes.
We can hear you. You're great.
Yeah. So, okay, so I guess I'm gonna tell you a story of like a very weird story of like how things and how some of the gardens that you see in Naicha came to happen. And to do that, I'm gonna do a little short background about myself. I'm from a small town called Yecla in Spain, which is like a very monocultural town in which like pretty much everyone is white and everyone has the same cultural background. And in 2018, no, 2007, wow, in 2007 I moved to New York City, and as you can imagine, this was like quite a shock, right? So in this image you have a picture of my small town, rural in like southern eastern Spain, kind of isolated. My family, my mom's side were farmers, so I grew up very much in the fields and in contact with the land, and in contact with trees, growing almonds, grapes, olives, and in my town there is one say that everyone says that is like we do things that God commands, meaning that there is only one way to do things, right? And that worked really well for my hometown because we all grew under the same kind of like cultural identity. Then I moved to New York, and the other picture in the screen is New York City, is the map of New York City, painted with different colors, and the colors represent the different ethnicities that we have in the city, right? The different demographics. So as you see, New York City is almost like the rainbow. There is people from all over the world, and it's a very huge contrast with my hometown. So when I moved here, I tried, I needed to understand how people experience moving to a new place and being a migrant, right, and adapting to a new place. And at that time, I was reading a book. I always love, as I said, gardening and plants and farming and growing stuff. And I was reading about vegetables and forest and plants in the northeast of the United States. And I came upon this idea that is called the outer seed shadow. And the outer seed shadow, it is in plant migration, it's an idea in plant migration. It's a region in which there is seeds from different ecosystems that come to that area, and they start growing, but because of the circumstances, because of the weather, because of the conditions, these seeds, these migrant seeds, cannot reproduce themselves enough to be considered part of the new ecosystem. So this is quite curious because, as you can imagine, this outer seed shadow is defining or naming what we call minorities in our cities, right? So like a minority from a different cultural identity that comes to a new city and try to succeed and try to be present, but the conditions are not always favorable or like the best. So they become present, they are present in the cities, in the ecosystems, but they are not fully considered part of that ecosystem. So it was in this idea in which I got inspired. And in 2012, I decided to do an experiment. And I made a planter in my studio. I'm an artist as well by training. And I made a planter in my studio, and I decided to plant a plant that will represent the majority, the the ethnicity that has a majority in each of the neighborhoods of Manhattan. So let's say I took the census, the 2000 census, demographic census of New York, go through it, learn which were the majority in each of the neighborhoods of Manhattan, and then choose a plant that will represent them. In the left side of the slide, you see the planter, which had the shape of Manhattan, with the 35 plants representing the 35 neighborhoods of Manhattan. And each plant, it was representing also a different culture, the majority of the cultures of this neighborhood. Then this planter was in my window for a while, for a long time, and in the window of the studio, and I was trying to recreate the weather conditions as much as possible. So if it was raining outside, I was watering, and if it was dry, I was not watering, etc., etc. And the one in the right, that is like 6 months after, and I did not did anything. So what happened? It was some plants took over fully. Some plants helped others to thrive. Some of them just died. Some just did fine. Some grew wild. And I realized how much of this experiment, it was just a representation of what happens in real life, right? So how much these plants are like people, and like the people who coexist and live together in those neighborhoods, right? And how it is important to be aware of how this happens, right? And what can we do about that? So at that time, the curator of the Parks Department, the New York City Parks Department, came to my studio, saw the experiment, and asked me, I think we need to do this garden for real. And I think we need to build this garden in real size. And we did. And we built this garden in Duarte Square, which is located in Soho, downtown Manhattan, at the intersection of Canal Street and 6th Avenue. And that picture that you have in the screen right now, it is the gigantic version of that planter that I had in my studio. But to plant these plants, what I did, it was I interview an immigrant, one per each of the districts of Manhattan. So 35 districts, 35 immigrants. And I was asking, we did an open call. So people submitted their willingness to participate in the project. And I interviewed them about their experience, right? Because ultimately what I wanted, it was to learn if other people were going through something similar of what I was going through when I arrived into New York. And at the end of the interviews, they tell me their stories, what happened to them, how they adapted, how they didn't, the challenges. They were talking about this outer seed shadow experience that they had as a minority coming to New York. And at the end of the interview, I asked them to choose a plant that will represent them in the garden. And that's how we did it. And then we plant those plants exactly where they live in the island. And then the garden became a public space, a gathering space. And we decided that it was important as well to use this garden as a teaching tool, right? Because all these plants were not just plants, they were also representing people. And you could go to the website, listen to the interview, and then learn how these plants also have a story. As you can imagine, some of you said that you are gardening, right? And that you garden. So you know as well that plants, as you saw I learned in my experiment, if you don't tend to them, if you don't care for them, they will do what they do. And if they need to survive, they will grow wild and they will take over, and they won't care if there are other plants that need less or more water, or need less or more sun, or need a different kind of soil. They don't care, they just exist, right? So I think this was like a great opportunity for teaching the community living around this garden about coexistence and social coexistence. So we did a lot of gardening workshops. And the gardening workshops were made to make sure that all the 35 plants that we planted there will survive, even though it was an impossible task, right? Because we had palm trees, we have roses, we have corn, we have peppers, we have orchids, we have all kinds of like tropical plants and plants representing countries from all over the world. But surprisingly, 29 out of the 35 plants survived. And that's because through the workshops that we did workshops with kids, with adults, with seniors, with all kinds of like groups. And what we were doing is like, okay, so this plant is, imagine that there was a cacti, and this cacti was next to a fern. And the fern needs a lot of water, the cacti needs no water. So what can we do? So, okay, so we're gonna change the soil, and we're gonna put sand in the cacti. So when we water the fern, it filters the water, and it gets more chances of survival. So that's what we did. And if there was another plant that needed more shade, we would create some shade, some artificial shade. But at the same time that we were gardening, as you can imagine, people were also learning that these plants were representing people, and how we can use that as a metaphor. How can we use that as a comparison? It's like, this is like your neighbors, right? We need to learn about them. We need to learn about who we live along with, and what they might need or might not, and what we have in common or we might not. And so then after this, I did a lot of different projects. I want to talk about this. It's like, so it resulted in realizing how much gardening can be used to talk about different social justice issues. I did a garden about refugees in Valencia. I work with refugees there. I did another one about colonialism and idiosyncrasy in Spain. I did a one about public housing and self-organizing and healing in Sweden. And one day I met Jackie Fisher, who I don't know, perhaps some of you know. She lives in Riverdale and is a member of the community. And she was already doing some work in Marble Hill houses down the hill. And she had founded the garden there, a community garden down there. And at the time, she was they were struggling on getting members at the garden, right? They had a beautiful space, they had some gardening. So we met at I think it was like a meeting that Serious Living Laboratory, another non-for-profit, organized. And I presented my work, and there was a lot of connection. So she was the one who approached me and said, like, would you be interested in creating one of your outer seed shadow gardens that is permanent? Because all the other gardens that I created before were temporary, because they were made in collaboration with museums, they were made in collaboration with institutions, and more into the art world rather than in more stable settings. So I thought it was a little crazy, but I took the challenge, and then we started working with the Marble Hill Houses residents. And we went through a process, and here is like when we come here, we went through a process of like getting to know the community, because that is something that I learned about the importance of making sure that what we build, it is sustainable and will last longer. You need to have the community to have a buy-in. You need to have to make sure that the community want to take part in the project. So we knocked on all the 1,759 doors of Marble Hill houses. And we asked the residents if they were interested in a garden. And not only a garden, but it was a garden that it was going to represent who they are as a community. And this was exciting for them. And also the idea that I, as an artist, I was going to work with them in the design of this garden, how this garden was going to look, in the shapes of the beds, in the kind of plants that we were going to plant, and how those plants and the design of the garden, it was going to represent who they are individually as and as a community. This is me interviewing some of the residents, knocking some of the doors, giving them the flyers. This is us meeting with the tenants associations, with the community board, in the public school. And we even got a little write-up at the beginning. This is like back in 2012 in the Riverdale Press. And then it came to happen. And we built the Marble Hill Garden, which is the one that you see. And I hope that some of you have passed by it. And it was a permanent garden, and it was a simple design. It was just that each bed, it was representing each of the buildings of the development, and the shape of the blueprint of the beds. It is the blueprint of the buildings if you see them from the sky. So, and they are laid out in the garden in the same way that they are laid out in the development. So there was a direct connection with the development, and then in each bed, two residents were planting a plant that was representing themselves and connected to the interview that I did. So this movement, which it was just like this artistic intention of designing together the garden and connecting their stories, their personal stories with the plants of the garden and their lives, it had a huge impact, in the sense that before doing this, there were 5 gardeners. After doing this, we had 24 gardeners, right? So triple the people who were interested. And it didn't took, so from, just to give you an idea, it's like, it took just me thinking about my own personal, struggles, or like my personal experience in life, and how that experiment that I did in my studio, it ended up becoming a non-for-profit organization that now works with NYCHA, the New York Housing Authority, to build gardens in the developments and connecting the communities who live in the developments with artists, and to build gardens to address issues that are happening in those neighborhoods. So after we founded the nonprofit, I was not anymore the artist, but we were commissioning local artists to work with the communities. Of course, in Marble Hill, we had a big wait list of people who were interested in participating in our gardens. So since we were at capacity in the original location, we founded a new garden called Terrace, and Cheryl Winsing Wong worked with residents of Marble Hill houses to create the new garden. And the concern that they wanted to address, it was cohabitation and food literacy, the need of like having food literacy in the community. And we also work with Asha Hanna in Dykeman houses to create the DAP garden, the Dignity and Pride garden. And this was a garden that it was built with the shape of two hands grasping each other. It was a black hand and then a brown hand. And the concern that they had at that time, it was the coexistence between the African American community and the Latino community, and that they wanted to address it with the garden. So both the shapes of these gardens, how they are designed, and the plants that are planted are connected with these ideas, and they are made on purpose to connect the people directly with their stories and the plants. And that creates a strong bond that also becomes, you know, the base and the foundation for the sustainability of these projects. And so yes, so this is the story of these gardens. And the other side of these gardens is that they are not just gardens. We also develop public programming, and this program is also connected with the themes of the gardens. So Marble Hill Garden was founded in 2017. So it's been around now for 7 years. Terrace was in 2018, 6 year, and Dykeman was founded in 2019, right before the pandemic. And since the pandemic, we haven't opened a new garden, and we are going to be opening a new garden next year in Polo Ground houses. So, but beyond the gardens, what we do is each year, as I said, the programming. And each year we meet, all the gardeners meet every month. And in February, the first meeting of the season. And they talk and they decide what is the theme that they want to address this year. So for example, for this current year, Marble Hill wanted to address chronic disease. And every single plant and every single program that we did at the garden, it was related to that. So we were planting foods, we were planting herbs that were not only connected to each individual, but also it was something that could be used to address chronic disease. And then we curated the programming workshops on tea and herbs, making infusions. We also had a cooking workshop. We had a dancing workshop. We did a movement workshop. We had also a printing, an art making workshop. And recently, I don't know if I'm missing any at the moment, but basically every month from May till November, we have an activity at each of the gardens. And in Marble Hill was chronic disease. And in Dykeman, the theme this year was the healing of beauty, and how, you know, growing flowers, creating beautiful things, and having beautiful things around us have a healing power as well. And in Dykeman, there is no food, so they only grow flowers and herbs. So that's why the theme of the year was that. And so every year the theme changes, and every year the programming goes along with the theme that the gardeners choose. And also each time the garden is built, they work with artists, but at the same time, there's also artists that come back and do this kind of programming. There is also art making programming that we do every year. And so yes, I think I'm going to stop there, the presentation. I would love to have some questions and comments, and also have the chance to have a conversation.
Oh, hi. I think that was just wonderful. I mean, it's
Thank you.
so fabulous, all these things that you've done since you've come here. When you were first talking about immigrants to Manhattan,
Mhm.
I came from another state to Manhattan, and I can say that Manhattan is a foreign country to Americans who come from other states. And I had a really hard time adjusting to living in Manhattan. So and I was from Wisconsin. I was trying to think what plant would mine be? Would it be a pine tree or something, you know?
Uh-huh.
So I just thought it was just beautiful and what you're doing here in the Bronx. And have you spoken to the New York Botanical Garden? Do they know what you're doing here? Because it's
Yeah. Funny that you ask. And I want to say something. So, absolutely, yes. That's why I changed. I stopped saying immigrants, but I started using the word migrants
Mhm.
because I think that, as you well said, I think that this is not an experience that only people coming from foreign countries experience, right? I think this is an experience that anyone who leaves their hometown where they grew up and they have their roots and move somewhere else will experience something similar. So that's why I started using the word migrant rather than immigrant, right? That so anyone who changes location. And and yes, we, as a matter of fact, we at the New York Botanical Garden, we were in touch at the beginning of the project, and we looked into perhaps do programming and having some of their instructors come to do some programming to the gardens, and they did back in 2018. But I did work more closely with the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, and because they have a program that is called the Bugs, which is just community members who want to learn about gardening and fostering gardens, and then they volunteer for nonprofits or community gardens. And I work with Hannah Lofton, and she was one of these bugs at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, and she's been doing programming for us almost since the beginning. And she did it for the temporary gardens back in 2012 and 14, and she's been doing it as well in the permanent gardens in the Bronx, in Marble Hill, and in Dykeman. And the community members, the gardeners, love her. They really love her. It's like she's wonderful. She's a beekeeper, and she always brings honey in the honeycomb from her bees, and like give workshops about what you can do with honey for home remedies for different things. And it's just like so much knowledge. Yes, I don't know if this is answering your question, but
I know, but I think either of those botanical gardens would be fascinated with the project of having a map of New York by gardens, like what you did with Manhattan, with
Mhm.
also doing the Bronx and
Oh, we did it. We did. I didn't include it in these slides, but we did with the Parks Department. We did a garden for Manhattan. We did one for Brooklyn, and we did one for the Bronx, for Queens. And the Bronx, we never did a one for the whole borough, but it's because we already started doing the nonprofit and moving more to permanent gardens and working with the New York Housing Authority to create these gardens. And then the gardens became more community development tools than art pieces, right? Yeah. So yeah,
well, it's just a thought. I mean,
I
years
love the idea. Yes.
years ago I worked at the New York Botanical Garden, and for Christmas they have a train show. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yes.
In the conservatory, and it has all the buildings in Manhattan and Yankee Stadium and all of that. And I can visualize that they would love to have a permanent exhibit on grounds that was just what you described you did for Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan of the whole city. I mean, I think they could get funding for that too. I mean, it sounds like it would be a very fundable idea. Anyhow, it's just, you seem to be doing so much. I'm not giving you more work, but
No, I love that idea. I love that idea. I would love to see that myself. You know, even if it was not me doing it, I would love to see a map of Manhattan with representing, and it can evolve as well, right? It's like, so because the neighborhoods change, right? So it's like the exhibit can also
and you
change.
could even have some water features for the
Yes.
Hudson River, and it could get really
I love the
expensive.
idea. I love the idea.
Well, congratulations. It's
Thank you so
really
much.
awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions or comments?
Okay, is there any way if anybody wanted to get in, I know it's for the apartments, but any way if anybody wanted to get involved or just help out or something, is that possible?
Yes, absolutely. So we sometimes, if there is room, because there is been some years that we have had 1 or 2 spots free, in Marble Hill in particular, since we have the 2 gardens, we have people have reached out to us and they had interest in getting a piece of the bed or a bed there. We have welcomed if there are people from the community, not someone who comes from, I don't know, Brooklyn and they went to like have something there. But if there are people from around the community, from the neighboring areas, we had last year someone from Kingsbridge. And then in the past, we have had other people from Marble Hill, not from the houses necessarily, but from the neighborhood. So that's a possibility. This past year, we were at full capacity, but there has been some years that we have had some spots and we have opened it to people. And also beyond that, we also welcome people to come to the programs. The best way to learn about our programming is social media. We are a little slow with the website, so we're a small organization and it takes we update the website almost after the program happened. But in social media, you can get it, you see the programming, and actually everyone is invited to come to the programming. So the programs happen on Saturdays and from 11 to 1 p.m. They are in the garden, weather permitting, or we sometimes move it to the community center as well, the senior center. And yes, everyone is welcome to come to the programs. So yeah, and Barbara, we can share our program. I don't think we have never done this, but we can definitely share. I don't know if you have shared when the programming that we have with everyone, but that's there. It's open.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Please feel free to send us, if you have anything special you'd like the community to know. That could be nice.
Yeah, like if you have a Facebook page or you said social media. I mean,
Yeah. Let me see if I can.
Okay, you're on Facebook and Instagram.
Yes. Okay. It's in the website. I'm putting the website right now in the chat. And there at the bottom, if you click contact, there is Instagram that I'm going to share with you right now in the chat as well, and also the Facebook page.
Okay, but if they look up Outer Seas Shadow or OSS?
So the name of the organization is OSS Project, but like the social media Instagram is OSS Project, and Facebook is Outer Seed Shadow. So yes, it's a little complicated, but I put the links in the chat for both the Facebook page and the Instagram page.
Thank you. I just went to your Facebook page. It works.
Yes, great, awesome.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Of course.
Nope.
And here we do post here everything at least 1 week in advance from what is happening, and it happens in the Instagram as well. So that is the best way to know about the programming, and also joining the newsletter. So in the newsletter, we send one every other month. So in the newsletter, we announce the programming for the next month or two, and that's what we normally do. Yeah. So
Okay, perfect. And they definitely have some really nice events. You've had cooking events and you've had teaching events, so
Yeah.
they're definitely worthwhile.
yeah, we have had art making, dancing, cooking, tea ceremony. We also we are actually having Nadia coming to do a presentation on well-being on Saturday from RSS, and to Marble. No, on Saturday is to Dykeman, and next Saturday is in Marble.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's a lot of echoing.
I don't know if it's me, but bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching what you doing for the community, and I appreciate that. And I thank you very much for it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. And I hope that I will get to see some of you coming. I know that the season is ending now, so there's not much to grow, and there's just one more activity that we have left, and then we're putting the gardens to sleep. But for next season, I hope that next season we get to see some of you coming to our programs.
Okay, and hopefully in the spring, we were going to have a tour.
True.
So in the spring, I would like to redo and have a tour. So if anybody's interested in going to visit the garden,
Yes.
we're going to arrange that. And I think we were going to do it for free. So even better.
Amazing. That's great. Yes, definitely. We should do that tour when.
Yeah, in the springtime, we'll arrange something.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you so much. It was really interesting, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
presentation.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.